Hello, it's me. You're gonna hear a little echo here because I'm under a bridge right now. I'm under a tiny little footbridge in a valley. Um, it's called the Grune. The Grune in Luxembourg City is this kind of natural gorge that's been cut out over millennia. Um, kind of digs very deep in, but it's this beautiful forested canyon with a little stream going through it. You can hear the stream right now. The stream is channeled a little bit. They built kind of a, you can kind of see it. It's a little concrete channel for it. I think I'm not sure why. It's silly, but it's okay. I'm standing right next to a sluice gate, or sitting next to a sluice gate. Anyway, hi. Um, Sorry, this week's video is a couple of days late. I had a lot of stuff going on, and I'm also sorry if I kind of look a little sweaty. I just got back from the gym, and I didn't shower there. I figured I'd shower at home, but then I realized, oh, I gotta look a little sweaty for you guys. But anyway, this is me all sweaty with my mohawk and a tie. Anyway, hello. I hope you're all well. This week, I was thinking about talking a little bit about land spirits because, as I mentioned, this valley, it's called the Grune. It just means the green, right? But I like to call it the Valley of Melazine. Further downstream from here, there's a little chapel, and inside of the chapel is built over an ancient pagan spring. They blocked it off, unfortunately. But it was open for a while, and they tried to make it a holy Christian spring, but apparently pagans kept kind of going to it, so they decided, all right, we'll just close it up. No more spring. That spring runs into the stream, and that stream runs into a river, which then runs into another river, which then runs into another river, which then runs into the Moselle, which then runs into the Rhine. So this same stream that I'm sitting next to connects to the same stream that I've been sitting by in many of these videos previously, and they all eventually flow into the Rhine. That makes all of those rivers Rhine daughters. If you know your Wagner or anything like that, you kind of have an idea, but there are many famous Rhine daughters, many of them supposedly responsible for drowning ships because they fall in love with sailors. And it's interesting because they're river spirits, they're river nymphs, in fact, as opposed to the sirens that we think of in the ocean. But it's interesting that the same stories kind of appear both for river spirits and also for ocean spirits. Of course, they're all connected. These streams all eventually run to the ocean. And then, of course, the ocean evaporates, falls down in rain, and eventually becomes streams, which then become rivers, which then go to the ocean. But this valley, the Grune, I tend to call it the Valley of Melazine, because the Valley of Melazine, Melazine was a spirit, a woman, goddess, nymph, land spirit, depending on how you want to look at it, who is supposedly responsible for the building of Luxembourg. So the story was she met a man who, eventually became the king or the duke of this area. And they fell in love, and she promised him that she would give him everything he needed to build an amazing castle and to build an amazing, powerful, strong city. And he was like, okay. And that went very, very, very well for a while. And he kept building. But eventually, there's always in so many of these myths, there's always somebody gets jealous or somebody gets suspicious. What? Who is she? And when they married, she said, you can have everything that I give you. I will give you absolutely everything of me, except on Saturdays. On Saturdays, I need to go into the river and be alone for the day. So all of my time is yours except for Saturdays. And that arrangement was fine. The king had never questioned it for a long time. But then doubts and suspicions and all that came up, and he would ask her, "What are you doing on Saturdays?" She's like, "That's my day. That's it." And he was supposedly convinced by I think it was a Catholic saint or whatever. The saints always get in the way of land spirits here in Europe. They're always the ones who are slaying the dragons or killing the monsters or getting their chapels built over holy springs. But so he was convinced to go spy on her. And so he goes on a Saturday, he follows her down the cliffs to the river, and then she bathes in the river. And he sees that she's either part serpent or part fish. There's multiple versions of the story, but basically, she was a river creature. She was a river nymph. And in one story, she was bathing her children, and they all turned into serpents or fish or other sea river type creatures. And so she finds out that he watched her, and she said, "Okay, you just violated that, And of course, he's like, "Oh, my wife is a monster," or whatever. And so the end of the story, it depends on it where you look. There's a Catholic version of the story where supposedly Melusine, was actually an enchained woman who was cursed by the devil. Every 9 years, she shows up at a chapel, and someone has to speak her real name or something like that. And if that doesn't happen, then she'll be forever damned, and whatever happens, Luxembourg will get destroyed. So she's, that myth points to something pretty old. Whenever in Europe, it's so much different from the United States. In the United States, like most of the myths of the people who were there have all been destroyed because the people were killed. Here, the myths got buried. They got buried by the church. They got covered over, pasted over with Catholic myths. For instance, the city of Metz, which is just not very far from Luxembourg, there was a dragon, a sea dragon serpent sort of thing called the Grui. I can never pronounce his name right, but and he was kind of worshipped and feared or whatever. And then a saint came along and he attacked him and then sent him into the river. That river, by the way, that's the Mosel that then goes into the Rhine. So supposedly that's gone, but the Catholic saint did something to him. Another example is the Tarasque. I believe it was Saint Catherine or Saint Therese. It's one of the two. Maybe it was Saint Therese. Saint Therese, killed a massive beast that was plaguing the land or whatever. Basically, a dragon. And then you get a third story. In Provence, there's the largest freshwater spring in Europe and the third largest in the world. It's a beautiful place. It's called Vaucluse. And that was a dragon as well. There was a dragon river spirit that lived there. That's a saint. I can't remember that saint's name, and who fucking cares? It's just a saint. And he supposedly slain it, whatever. And all of those myths are usually, they were always written by the Catholics. The whole thing, the history is written by the winners. It's pretty true. And the Catholic saints, the monks, etc., they wrote these myths. They wrote them as propaganda for the church. But if you scratch underneath, you then start to get an idea of what the pagan worship was like before the Christians came, because usually they keep the same names. That there was a river spirit in Metz called Gruy. There was, in Provence, a land spirit called the Tarasque. In Vaucluse, there was a spirit whose name I've absolutely forgotten, which makes me sad. I'll try to remember it. And then here, in Luxembourg, in this valley, there was a spirit named Melusine, who was supposedly conquered by the Catholic Church or whatever. But you scratch underneath that, you realize, oh, yeah. So the spirit responsible for this place, the spirit of this place, the goddess, as it were, or God. Man, spirits and gods, they flow into each other a lot. They're not always the same. Sometimes they are the same. Sometimes there are gods that started out as land spirits. A lot of African gods are like that, actually. Then there are other gods who are worshipped through land spirits in multiple places. Dionysus is like that. But there is a spirit here named Melusine. And so it's part of my ritual. I think I mentioned this before. It's part of my practice. I always think my gods. I always talk to them every morning and every night. But I also always include the Melusine. I always at the end say, thank you, Melusine, for letting me be here. Which is to say, also thank you for this land, for letting me be here. But also the spirit of the land. When I was in Bretagne, I would thank Anne, who is kind of like Duchess Anne, but not really. There's something else going on there, especially when you see that Saint Anne is incredibly popular in Welsh, Cornish, and Breton Catholicism, a little bit more popular than she should be. So you kind of get the idea. There's a spirit of those people, or a spirit of the land there. And of course, that's something hugely missing in the United States. I remember always trying to find the land spirits, and the land spirits there were always smaller and always scattered, and always difficult to contact. And because we never learn their names, and I assume many indigenous people probably learn their names, or oftentimes too, their own ancestors kind of. This is a fun fact. So, in many cultures, land spirits are also ancestors. This is pretty neat. So, for example, in Bretagne, there's a fairy, as it were, called the Corrigan. The Corrigan are, they're like fairies, except they're dead people. They're the dead and the fae kind of flow into each other. And the Corrigan tend to be in very specific places that are usually by ancient springs or ancient standing stones. But as I said, they're dead people. They're at some point they died, and then they became Corrigan, which is a land spirit. And if you're familiar at all, or if you know even just a tiny little bit about Haitian voodoo, Vaudoon, etc., this isn't so strange, because within them, and this is part of the reason, is some of the mixing of Haitian religion, or in Haitian religion. Much of it came from Africa, but a little bit of it came as well from the people they had contact with. So you can see the way that it sort of flows into each other. For them, the Barons, Papa Sandy, Mama Brigitte, they're often related to dead people, and in fact, especially with the Gede are often the first of a certain sort of person who is buried in a graveyard. So there's a specific Gede, or the same Gede exists in every single village. The first suicide, the first child to be born, to be stillborn, etc. So, where's it going with this? Oh, dead people and ancestors and land spirits and gods, like they all kind of flow together. And it's very difficult to tell. You don't need to tell, honestly. You don't need to distinguish, I think. I find that they're not so interested in us distinguishing it because we have all of these weird categories we have to have as humans, you know? What kind of worker are you? What class are you? Like, what gender are you? You know? Nature and the gods don't really work that way. That's us. It's a human thing. You know, I have my own suspicions on what category each one plays in, but I also fully acknowledge that I'm just some dude. I don't know everything, you know. And when you're asked, the answers they give are usually just laughter. You know, what kind of a question is that? But yeah. So I've always found that encountering, experiencing, meeting, talking to, offering to help the mind spirit of a place does a lot, both for you and for them, especially in places where no one talks to them anymore. I found in the United States there were always places where you went to go talk to the spirit of a forest or even a park, you know, and they were really excited, like, whoa, you're talking to me? No one talks to me. Cool. Sometimes they're way super talkative, and then sometimes they're like, all right, I don't want to talk to you. You kind of don't blame them, seeing as what American capitalism has done to the land there. Huh? But anyway, so I think that's all I wanted to talk about today. Like, you know, I'm here in the Valley of Melusine, talking about land spirits. And yeah, and I'm super happy. And I hope you guys are too. You all are too. And I'll see you next week. The next video might be sooner to this one, since this one was late. Anyway, love you all, and thank you so much for your support.